Good morning, and welcome to the Sunday morning services of the Unitarian Universal Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende. My name is Ron Lennox. I'm a member of the Sunday Services Committee, and I welcome you to today's service. Whether you're joining us by Zoom or here in person, we are grateful to be together this morning creating community. If you are joining by Zoom, you're one of the many in Mexico, Canada, and the United States, and probably a few other countries that are joining us today. We strive to be a loving community for each other and for our neighbors. We are mindful that the physical community of San Miguel de Allende, which we share, is located on the ancestral lands of the Chichimeca, Otomi, and Nahua people. We are all welcome here, of any faith or of no particular faith. We are welcome here. People of all abilities and gifts are welcome, as are people with affectional orientations, gender identities, income levels, thoughts and questions about matters of faith and beyond. We are all welcome. This Saturday, December the 10th, is the 74th anniversary of the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations. We look forward to hearing a little bit more from our member, Cliff DuRand, giving reflections on that declaration and on human rights later this morning. Those of you here in person are invited to come down after the service to the area around the pool for coffee and to talk with each other and our speaker. If you're on Zoom, don't leave. Stay around on Zoom and you'll get to visit with each other and chat. I have a couple of announcements. First, we are delighted to welcome back Judy McKay as a quote-unquote new member again. Judy has been living in San Miguel for more than 25 years since she arrived here with her late husband. Together, they joined our fellowship soon after they arrived. She served previously in a few capacities, meet and greet initially on the board with some stints as recording secretary, newsletter writing and editing, and those were the days with the true cut and paste, not like we have today. And Judy also used to be called on to speak occasionally with some humor, like we might need today for me. Judy lives in La Jona, and is Judy in the audience today? Judy, please stand. Welcome. And we'll all make sure we welcome you at the coffee hour after the service. Do we have any visitors here today? Please stand and tell us your name.
I'm the only one. I'm Vince.
As in Vincent, we welcome you. One more? Nope. Please.
My name is Aurora Ballerino, and today is my second time here in Baltimore. It's a pleasure to be here.
Very good. And please join us downstairs afterwards so we can meet you personally. If we have any visitors on Zoom, please type your name and location into the chat window so we can chat with you after the service is over. In celebration of our fellowship's 35th anniversary, we're continuing to have many fun activities. Please, all of you, check the welcome desk on your way out for opportunities to sign up for upcoming events like Christmas caroling, cookie baking. Oh, in fact, Robin, make sure I had a note here. This is the last day to sign up for the Christmas cooking class. So please do that today so you can send some cookies this way. There are also t-shirts available for purchase over here. Plus you see all the many, many wonderful items that are available to bid on. So please check that out after the service. Finally, please check the order of service on our website, which is uufsma.org, for the various activities and events sponsored by the fellowship. The website also has links to our YouTube channel, where you'll find previous speakers, previous services, plus information if you want to become a member. Now for our opening words, I'm going to turn to Kathy, who will lead us in a responsive reading. Excuse me.
Good morning, everyone. And I was just given one more announcement that didn't get to you, Ron, which is that immediately after next Sunday's service, we will have a general membership meeting to vote on authorizing expenditures just for the first quarter of 2023 until we have our full annual meeting. So that will be immediately after next Sunday's service here and on Zoom. And now, to open, we have a responsive reading, number 438, Morning, by Clinton Lee Scott. So I'll ask you to all rise in body or spirit. And the words are now, they are both in your hymnal. I'll read the regular print, and you can respond with the italics, or if you're looking at the screen, with the blue. From the east comes the sun, bringing a new and unspoiled day.
It has already circled the earth and looked on distant lands and faraway peoples.
It has passed over mountain ranges and the waters of the seven seas.
It has shone upon rivers and fields, and into the windows of homes, shops, and factories.
It has beheld proud cities with gleaming towers.
And also the hovels of the poor.
It has been witness to both good and evil, the works of honest men and women, and the conspiracy of knaves.
It has seen marching armies, bomb blasted villages, and the destruction and waste that humiliate.
Now, unsullied from its tireless journey, it comes to us, messenger of the morning.
Harbinger of a new day.
Now, please remain standing as we light our chalice. And then we will recite our community's unique covenant, our promise to each other. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. Thank you, Cliff. And now Hillary will join me as we recite our covenant, first in English and then in Spanish. The words will appear shortly on your screen. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Well, this brings us to a very special time in our service, set aside for our community to share with each other joys and sorrows and concerns. Every week, you can email our minister, Tom Rosiello, with a joy or concern, and if you are on Zoom right now and have one to share, please type it into the chat box. Cliff is going to help light the candles, but we begin with my stealing this from him to light a candle for our special joy for Cliff's 85th birthday. Happy birthday. And it was celebrated this past Thursday. We have a candle of concern for Ann Geyer, Kirsten and Susan Newbeck, who tested positive for COVID and are recovering at home. We send our thoughts, healing energy, and best wishes to them. I did hear from Ann this morning, and she is feeling better, so. And a candle of support for my Sunday service co-chair, Susan McDonald, who has been through the mill with illnesses and is now recovering from a bad flu, but really on the mend. And from Don Zealot, his joy is that Margie McKenzie is receiving excellent cancer treatment at some of the finest treatment centers in the U.S., and is being so well supported by family and friends in the process. And Dan and I want to light a candle for our dear friend in Charlotte, who was diagnosed with a very bad brain cancer in the fall and has miraculously completed months of aggressive chemo with good results, has a bone marrow transplant coming next month, had brain surgery 3 days ago, and texted me this morning with humor and hope. May we all find such resources within. And as we have been doing for many months, we light our blue and yellow candle for all those killed and suffering from the war in Ukraine, especially the loss of power and heat as the cold winter months are upon us. Now I'm just going to check if we have any typed into chat. No. So our last candle and a moment of silence for all the joys, sorrows, and concerns that are felt deeply in our hearts but have not been spoken here this morning. Thank you, Cliff. Our reading today is from Elie Wiesel, who survived the horrors of the Holocaust as a boy and was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to defend human rights and peace around the world. In '86, the Nobel Committee wrote, "Wiesel is a messenger to mankind. His message is one of peace, atonement, and human dignity." The following is adapted from Elie Wiesel's Nobel Prize acceptance speech. I remember, it happened yesterday, or eternities ago. A young Jewish boy discovered the kingdom of night. And now the boy is turning to me. "Tell me," he asks, What have you done with my future? What have you done with your life? And I tell him that I have tried. And then I explain to him how naive we were, that the world did know and remain silent. And that is why I swore never to be silent whenever and wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. Whenever men or women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or political views, that place must, at that moment, become the center of the universe. There is so much injustice and suffering crying out for our attention. Victims of hunger, of racism, and political persecution, writers and poets, prisoners in so many lands, governed by the left and by the right. Human rights are being violated on every continent. More people are oppressed than free. And action is the only remedy to indifference, the most insidious danger of all. There is much to be done. There is much that can be done. One person of integrity can make a difference of life and death. As long as one dissident is in prison, our freedom will not be true. As long as one child is hungry, our lives will be filled with anguish and shame. What all these victims need above all is to know that they are not alone, that we are not forgetting them, that when their voices are stifled, we shall lend them ours, that while their freedom depends on ours, the quality of our freedom depends on theirs. Now, please remain seated for our hymn, Imagine. The lyrics are in your order of service if you wish to sing along, and they will be on the screen.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today.
Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace.
You might say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one.
Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world.
You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one.
Good morning. My name is John Simsarian. Cliff will be providing details regarding the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I will provide a brief introduction, and I am honored that he has asked me to join him today. As you may know, Eleanor Roosevelt was the U.S. representative on the Commission on Human Rights. My father, James Simsarian, was an international lawyer and State Department officer. In this capacity, he served as staff to Mrs. Roosevelt. He became a friend of Eleanor's, and I remember her coming to our house for dinner twice and going to Hyde Park to visit her. Special memories. Following the approval of the Declaration, my father served as a U.S. representative to the UN Commission on Human Rights to help draft a covenant on human rights. In a State Department article released July 1949, he writes the following, and I quote, "The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, approved by the General Assembly in Paris on December 10, 1948, was not drafted in the form of a treaty and accordingly is not a legally binding document. It enumerates civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. In contrast to the Declaration, the covenant is being drafted in the form of a treaty, and after its approval by the General Assembly, the UN General Assembly, will be submitted to governments for their ratification. The covenant will be binding only on countries which ratify it through their regular constitutional procedure. In the United States, it would be submitted to the Senate for the approval of 2/3 of that body." End of quote. It was not until December 1966 that the UN General Assembly adopted 2 international treaties. The U.S. took no action until 1977, when Jimmy Carter signed the covenant and submitted it to the Senate for advice and consent. And it was not until June 8, 1992, that the International Bill of Rights Treaty was ratified by the United States when George Bush signed it. That was 44 years after the Declaration of Human Rights was approved by the UN. It's kind of remarkable. Cliff will provide more detail on the contents of the Declaration. It is very far-reaching. Cliff?
Thank you, John. I want to offer some reflections on human rights today. My title is a little too ambitious. Even a cursory survey of human rights today would take a book, not a mere 20-minute talk. So what I want to do is share with you a few reflections on certain aspects of human rights. So please don't be too disappointed if I fail to touch on your favorite topic. I will not talk about the rights of specific groups, such as workers or women or immigrants or cultural minorities. The whole notion of group rights is controversial, since rights have generally been conceived as belonging to individuals. What I want to focus on are those rights that apply to all humans, that is, universal human rights. And it is human rights that I am concerned with, so that excludes animal rights, a notion that I find to be very suspect from a philosophical point of view. So let me begin with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. December 10 is the 74th anniversary of its adoption by the General Assembly of the United Nations. This agreement by the nations of the world was a historical milestone in the establishment of rights based on common consent, just as the addition of the Bill of Rights to the U.S. Constitution a century and a half earlier was such a milestone in my own country. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights owes much to the proposals of the non-aligned nations and was drafted by the Canadian John Humphrey. And it was the vigorous leadership of Eleanor Roosevelt who won the backing of the government of the United States, without which the proposal might not have gone very far. In the decades since the U.S. has publicly championed human rights, and this has been important in winning other governments to respect them. That is why, as we look at the state of human rights today, we need to pay special attention to the current role of the U.S. It is deeply troubling to read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in this light. Let me cite a few of its provisions. Article 5, no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Article 6, everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Article 9, no one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. Article 11, Section 1, everyone charged with a penal offense has the right to be presumed innocent until proved guilty according to law in a public trial at which he has had all the guarantees necessary for his defense. Until recently, these rights were taken for granted as fundamental for any civilized society. They expressed the conscience of humankind. Now, there are those who think such ideas are quaint and no longer relevant in the defense of what they call freedom. And these people are in control of the most powerful governments in the world. This is a situation that those of us who are U.S. citizens feel to be profoundly embarrassing. The articles I have just quoted are among the legal rights mentioned in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I'll return to them shortly, but in addition to the legal and political rights most often mentioned in the West, there are also economic and cultural rights. These have been especially important in other parts of the world, but less so in the U.S. For example, Article 22, everyone as a member of society has the right to Social Security and is entitled to realization through national effort and international cooperation, and in accordance with the organization and resources of each state, of the economic, social, and cultural rights indispensable for his dignity and the free development of his personality. Article 25, Section 1. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care, and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. Now, this is of obvious importance to peoples in the poorer countries of the world, but also to many in the U.S. who do not earn a living wage or have health insurance. In some countries, health care is seen as a human right to be provided by society, as is education and culture and other such things that contribute to the fuller development of the human being. The U.S. has long been a laggard on these economic and cultural rights. Indeed, any guarantee of such economic rights is widely viewed as socialism. The neoliberal orthodoxy that prevails there and has been imposed on peoples in many other parts of the world makes the individual, not society, responsible for one's own economic well-being. For example, Jeane Kirkpatrick, Ronald Reagan's ambassador to the UN, argued that economic rights cannot be human rights, for they must be provided by others through forceful extraction, taxation, and that negates other people's inalienable rights. In contrast with this libertarian individualism, we find in Article 29 the assertion that it is only in community that the free and full development of each personality is possible. This marks one of the fundamental ideological shifts that has occurred since the adoption of the original Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The dominant political discourse has moved away from the communitarian notion that society has basic responsibility to ensure the well-being and development of its members, to the individualistic view that we are each on our own. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights has relatively little to say about political rights. This is no doubt due to the fact that the UN General Assembly was made up of countries with very different political systems, and there was not much all could agree on. In spite of that, however, Article 21 asserts everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country directly or freely through freely chosen representatives. The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. This shall be expressed in periodic and genuine elections, which shall be by universal and equal suffrage, and shall be held by secret vote or by equivalent free voting procedures. Article 18 speaks of freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Article 19, freedom of opinion and expression. And Article 20, freedom of peaceful assembly and association. These rights correspond to the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Turning our attention to that for a moment, I'd like to focus on freedom of speech or the press and how it has been drastically transformed today. The import of the special protections given to speech is not just to secure an individual right as an end in itself, but rather to establish a fundamental, foundational precondition for democratic self-government. The heart of the First Amendment is that it protects participation in the public dialogue by which a society makes its collective decisions. Democracy is the possibility of collective decision-making about collective action in pursuit of the common good. Thus, this is a right not of individuals, but of citizens, a right to participate in the public conversation. Thus, it is a perversion to extend First Amendment protections to so-called commercial speech. The purpose of free speech is not to protect advertisers in their efforts to sell us their wares. It is to guarantee citizens, as citizens, access to the public ear. It is to protect political speech above all else, and it is the speech of citizens that is to be protected, not that of corporations. Alongside this right, there is a corresponding responsibility, namely the responsibility to listen to one another. Declaring one's views to an empty room is not an exercise of free speech. It is an act of futility. Others must be listening and prepared to enter into dialogue. The disengagement from public life of so many in the U.S. today, their absorption in private life and pursuit of self-interest, is corrosive to free speech and the democracy that it is essential to. There is a second problem here as well. Under democratic theory, all citizens are to be equal. That is what Thomas Jefferson meant when he wrote, "All men are created equal." Yet, in response to efforts to place limits on political campaign contributions, the Supreme Court has ruled that money is speech, and thus limits on contributions violate the First Amendment. So, even though each citizen has one vote, those with more money get to dominate the public conversation that precedes the voting, and that dialogue is the very heart of a democracy. As Al Gore has argued in his book, The Assault on Reason, what passes for a national conversation today is usually a television monologue consisting of highly sophisticated propagandistic messages. It is those with deep pockets who dominate our politics, and that control is protected by a Supreme Court that has lost sight of the need for political equality in a democracy. This further perversion of free speech has its roots in another perverse Supreme Court decision, this one dating back to 1886. In the landmark Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad, the court extended 14th Amendment protections to corporations by declaring them to be legal persons. Originally intended to give legal protection to freed slaves, this Reconstruction Amendment said, quote, "Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." Close quote. The Supreme Court extended to corporations the rights of us, flesh and blood persons, by enacting the legal fiction that corporations are persons. This has opened the door to extending to them many of our political rights, such as First Amendment protection of free speech. This is reflected in the court's decision that placing limits on campaign contributions is a violation of freedom of speech. In effect, money is speech. This then gives immensely greater access to the public dialogue to those with greater wealth, contrary to the democratic principles that all citizens must be equal. Although corporations are not citizens, not yet at least, these fictitious persons have acquired rights that have come to trump the rights of us mere mortals. Unlike us, corporations can be immortal, and their power and wealth has grown immensely through the generations. This becomes disturbingly clear if we return to the international scene, or I should say the global scene. The corporate-led globalization that we've been witnessing over the past decades has been establishing the foundation of a global constitution in which the only citizens are transnational corporations. They are the ones who make the decisions that affect our lives, even to the extent of being able to overrule the democratically made decisions of communities and even nations. And states are charged with the responsibility to enforce those decisions on their own citizens. Alongside that development, in the U.S., we have also seen the expansion of executive powers in ways that threaten the civil liberties of its citizens. This has been articulated by the neocons and the Federalist Society in what is called the theory of the unitary executive. I think this should more accurately be called the imperial presidency. Looking back at the intentions of the framers of the U.S. Constitution, it is clear that a primary concern was to avoid an accretion of powers in the executive. To avoid this, a division of powers between three branches of government was established with a system of checks and balances among them. more than protections of specific rights offered by the Bill of Rights, this was seen as the best guarantee of the liberties of citizens, for it was this that was to prevent the emergence of a new king. Nevertheless, over the last 90 years, under conditions of nearly constant war or perceived danger of war, there has been a gradual expansion of presidential power above that of Congress, the branch of government that was to have been the representative of the sovereignty of the people. The Cold War in particular went far in institutionalizing expanded executive power. But this clear trend, long evident, was greatly accelerated by the Bush-Cheney administration. Vice President Cheney, in particular, was a vigorous and tireless champion of what he sees as restoring presidential powers, although in fact his restoration goes far beyond anything that has ever existed before in U.S. history. From warrantless wiretaps and mail and electronic monitoring of citizens to unchallengeable, indefinite detention of persons declared by the president to be enemy combatants, from kidnapping of persons to torture and extraordinary rendition, from claims of executive privilege in order to escape congressional oversight, to defiance of subpoenas. This administration exceeded all our fears of its intentions to shred the Constitution and the rule of law by asserting virtually unlimited power. Nowhere is this more evident than in the brazen use of presidential signing statements. Historically, presidents have sometimes issued statements when signing a bill into law, setting forth their reasons for supporting it and congratulating those who worked on the bill. But in an extraordinary quantum leap of authority, recent presidents have used these signing statements to set forth which parts of the law he's going to disregard. The Constitution gives the president only two alternatives: either sign a bill into law or veto it. It does not give him the authority to rewrite the law in a way that better suits him. That authority rests with the legislative branch. In effect, presidents now usurp legislative authority and assert a right to disobey duly enacted laws. It is hard to see how this is very different from the actions of a king whose will makes law to which he is himself not bound. If that isn't scary enough for you, you ain't seen nothing yet. Look at some of the executive orders that have been issued from the White House to ensure continuity of government in case of a catastrophic emergency, a term that is very broadly defined. Under these executive orders, continuity is ensured by giving the president virtually unlimited powers. These go beyond previously enacted emergency legislation in that they do not allow Congress to override a presidential declaration of emergency. In other words, by his own order, the president can make himself an unchallengeable ruler whenever he claims a sufficient emergency exists. Now, I want to suggest that there is a connection between the process of corporate globalization and the developing imperial presidency. As Chalmers Johnson has argued, a republic and empire are not compatible. If the U.S. is to continue to be the global promoter and protector of global capitalism, the kind of concentration of power and action in the presidency that the neocons are confronting us with is necessary. It is the imperial role of our state and the corporations which it serves that is the source of the problem. Capitalism has evolved into a global stage that now threatens the very rights and liberties that it has long proclaimed as its own. And as we saw during the 4-decade-long Cold War, if sufficient fear can be induced into a people, they will accept every ever greater power over them that promises to protect them and so willingly give up their rights. This can be seen with the reaction to 9/11 and the pandemic. I want to close by briefly posing a basic philosophical question. Where do rights come from? Through the ages, various thinkers have claimed rights are God-given or are derived from nature or are rooted in the requirements to be fully human. But if we take the question where rights come from as an empirical question, then it seems to me that the answer is that rights come from common consent in society, and that such consent is won through social struggle. Rights place claims on society that others are bound to respect. Often these claims can come to be recognized only against the opposition of others. Whether it be the right of habeas corpus claimed by the English aristocracy against their king, or the right of African Americans to equal treatment against the prevailing racism of the society, or the right of Mexican immigrants to be treated with respect, all such rights have to be won through struggle. Philosophic theories are weapons of legitimation in those struggles. So too, if we are to succeed in protecting rights today, struggle is required. It will take continuing struggle to restore individual rights against an ever more powerful state. It will take continuing struggle to restore the basic political rights of democracy. It will take continuing struggle to overcome the dominant power of corporations over our lives. And it will take continuing struggle to restore the good name of our nation in the eyes of the world. It will take continuing struggle to catch up with the economic rights so widely accepted in many other countries. We have our work cut out for us on this, the 74th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Let's get to it. And now we turn our attention to a remarkable but little-known speech by President Roosevelt. Given January 11, 1944, he called for an economic Bill of Rights. He died 15 months later, and little came of his vision. If the Democratic Party had followed his wish and made Henry Wallace his vice president, the U.S. would be a very different country today, and we might not have even had the Cold War.
In our day, certain economic proofs have become accepted as self-evident. A second Bill of Rights, under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of station or race or creed. Among these are the right to a useful and remunerative job, the right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation, the right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family a decent living, the right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom, freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad, the right of every family to a decent home, the right to adequate medical care, and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health, the right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment, the right to a good education. All of these rights spell security. And after this war is won, we must be prepared to move forward in the implementation of these rights to new goals of human happiness and well-being. For unless there is security here at home, there cannot be lasting peace in the world.
Listening to that remarkable speech by FDR, I have no doubt that he would feel completely at home in the UUFSMA. I'm particularly reminded of what he says about the guarantee of a secure, decent home for every family, a good education for every individual. My name is Jürgen Allers, and I'm a member of this fellowship's Social Action Committee, and I've been the steward for one of our beloved NGOs for a little over 3 years now, Casita Linda. That's the hat that I'm wearing today. This wonderful organization that began in 2001 to build a secure home for so many people who are living in extreme poverty in the outskirts of San Miguel. However, over the years, and it was in 2016 that the board of Casita Linda realized that supplying these homes, as vital as they themselves are, still it was not enough. Due to the radical shift of moving from makeshift homes, lacking basics such as secure walls, flooring, and roofs, and with scant education in personal hygiene, home maintenance, family planning, etc., providing twice-weekly workshops was imperative to the continuing growing success of Casita Linda's mission. This morning, I want to call your attention to the person who is at the center of these powerful, impactful, life-transforming workshops, not only to owners of the solid, secure little houses that they receive, but also, and this is important, to the larger community where these 6 to 8 homes are placed in different years. This year, by the way, trying to remember how to pronounce it, La Cienega, on the outskirts, moving in by the bridge that goes to Guanajuato or Leon. That community is going to receive about 8 or 9 houses in the years 23, 24. So the person I want to introduce you to is Magda Perez. She's a certified social worker whom I've been very privileged to know over these 3 years. She has an extraordinary and contagious passion as she designs and executes these workshops twice a week in all of the communities that Casita Linda has been building houses since 2001. I'm going to quote Magda's own words. Over the past few years, we have witnessed an increase in behavior that violates human relationships, an increase in conformism and narrow-mindedness, and an increase in poverty and marginalization in San Miguel's rural communities. Therefore, through our workshops and other community activities and trainings, we aspire to trigger personal growth using a humanistic, empathic approach. Our didactic process consists largely through workshops, popular and participatory, and our techniques include individual and group exercises, reflection tables, research tasks, role-playing, videos, and individual research presentations. Our overall objective is to generate knowledge and creative bonds that trigger the strengths and virtues of each participant, and to improve the quality of their lives through reflection, through dialogue, and the awareness of our personal and family and community relationships. Now, our more specific objectives include promoting the importance of self-esteem and self-awareness, reflecting on and set into practice the importance of human values and principles for one's relationships and life in general, understanding the power of relationships and bonds between women and men in order to move towards a life free of violence, raising awareness of one's relationship with and responsibility to the environment, and understanding one's sexual and reproductive rights, just to name a few. Needless to say, I could go on listing some of the other in greater detail, some of the other expansive work that Magda has been doing, but you get the idea. Our fellowship provides the greater part of Magda's very modest $800 equivalent monthly salary, which goes way beyond 40 hours a week. In conclusion, Casita Linda is extremely grateful for our fellowship's continuing support for this vital ministry. The offering will now proceed and be thankfully received.
De ti yo recibo, a ti te doy, así compartimos y vivimos hoy. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. De ti yo recibo, a ti te doy, así compartimos y vivimos hoy. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Well, we've had an embarrassment of riches today, so we are way over time. So we're going to skip this last new hymn and go directly to our closing words. But after the postlude, thank you, Jerry, after the postlude, we're going to put the video of this new hymn on for those of you who want to listen or sing along. And then those of you who need an immediate injection of caffeine can go straight downstairs. Closing words.
Go in peace, live simply, gently, at home in yourselves. Act justly, speak justly. Remember the depth of your own compassion. Forget not your power in the days of your powerlessness. Do not desire to be wealthier than your peers, and stint not your hand of charity. Practice forbearance, take care of yourselves as bodies, for you are a good gift. Crave peace for all people in the world, beginning with yourselves, and go as you go with the dream of that peace alive in your heart.
Profetiza, pueblo mío, desde el Tepeyac continental, invadido por sus bancos y multinacionales, sus ejércitos y sus complicidades. Profetiza desde ese lugar de miseria, fruto de la rapiña y el despojo, la acumulación desmedida. Es tiempo de continuar la marcha hacia el sol. Denuncia sin temor, con valentía. Profetiza, pueblo mío. Profetiza, pueblo mío, profetiza una vez más. Que tu voz sea el eco del clamor de los pueblos en la opresión. Profetiza, pueblo mío, profetiza una vez más, anunciándole a los pobres una nueva sociedad. Profeta te consagró, no haya duda y temor en tu andar por la historia. Sé fiel a tu misión, profetiza. justicia. La paz